All right, guys. So if you have been at this for a little bit of time now, you've probably realized that as you progress in your training, sometimes you got to pull out some new tricks. There might be some tools that you need to start using, maybe wristbands or maybe a waist belt, to be able to continue progressing in your movements, because maybe you've gotten stronger and you've outgrown certain movements. The other thing you can run into is you might be at a gym, or say you're working out at home, and you don't have a piece of equipment that you need to progress in a certain muscle group. So this video is designed to show you some tips and tricks on things you can do or switch up maybe in your routine at your gym to be able to hit these parts that often get overlooked because gyms aren't equipped with the machine that you need to target them directly. So things like adductors, having an adductor abductor machine, which you can see right behind me. If you don't have one of those, it can be hard to target adductors. It can be hard to get that abduction motion. So I'm gonna show you how to do that without a specific machine for it. And then the other thing is I'm gonna whip out some tools that are gonna help you progress in your strength, because you're gonna get to a certain point where your back is gonna outgrow your arms. So say you're doing something like a bent over row. If you really wanna continue progressing in your back, that's when you know that it's time to use wrist straps. Maybe just on your top sets, but you do need these tools eventually to continue progressing. So, excuse me. So I'm gonna go over these and drop any comments below if you have further questions, or maybe if you go and try these tricks out at your gym, let me know how they go, but I hope these help. So let's start with hamstrings. And I know what you're thinking, why are you sitting down to do quad extensions if you're working hamstrings? Because I wanna point out that you can double your quad extension machine for a hamstring curl, a standing hamstring curl if you need to. So if you're at a gym that has a leg extension, but you don't have a hamstring curl machine to isolate your hamstrings, all you have to do is slide out, turn around, slide back in. If you have a pad up here, you'll have to get it out of the way, but a good tool for it is to be locked in against the top of your glutes to keep your hips from shifting back. Because the further you can keep your hips forward, the stronger contraction you're gonna get in your hamstrings. So you wanna try to stand straight up, and then you perform standing hamstring curls here. So this is how a quad extension machine can double as a standing hamstring curl machine. And I'm just gonna go ahead and warn you, you will not be able to use nearly as much weight on a standing hamstring curl as you will on quad extensions, so know that. But you might also run into a situation where you don't have a quad or a hamstring machine. So you can use dumbbells to do both your quad extensions and your hamstring curls, and I'll show you how. Okay, so sticking with hamstring curls, what you can do is use a bench of some sort. Even if you don't have an official weightlifting bench, find something in your house. Maybe it's just a regular bench, and then position a chair in front of it. So you're gonna have to play with positioning for quite a while. Get your footing right, same thing with the dumbbell. You wanna have the dumbbell off to the side. So you got dumbbell, bench, chair, or whatever objects you need to use that you have in your house. And then first you're gonna make sure you get position on the bench. You want your knees to be slightly past the edge of the bench here, and you wanna be nice and locked in on the stool in front of you. So don't be swaying around as you move the weight. You want to keep your spine neutral the whole time. And the trickiest part of this whole thing is getting the dumbbell between your feet. So if you have a partner, have them put the dumbbell between your feet. If not, you're going to look silly just like this. Ha! So it might take you a couple tries to do that. I'm just going to warn you. But you can do it nonetheless. Then you perform your hamstring curls, keeping your mind on the muscle you're working, the back of your hamstrings, and you want to keep your spine neutral, just like I was saying. So there is a lying hamstring curl for you to isolate your hamstrings. Now, if you move into quads, you can essentially do the same thing using a dumbbell for quad extensions. So what you want to do is you want to have a bench. You need it to be a little thicker, so I put the chair right behind the bench. And in addition to that, you need to get your legs elevated off the ground a little bit so you can get that full range of motion. So you also need a pad or a roller or something that you can slide underneath your knees to give you that little extra bit of height. So So as you can see, my feet are off the ground now. And then you're simply going to put the dumbbell between your feet, lock in, and perform your extensions. And again, you'll need to play with this motion. You might have to finagle your equipment a little bit as you go. You might have to try different angles, but the main things are you need to be able to keep your torso still, and you need your knees to be elevated a little bit so that you get that full range of motion. And if you want to really enhance this exercise, squeeze at the top before going back down and keep the tension the whole time. There's your quad extension. Next, we're going to work on adductors, the inside of the thigh, right here. It can be really hard to target if you don't have one of those cute little adductor machines. So that's where pulling out Copenhagen planks can be helpful. So my setup is just a bench, turn sideways, and then I have a yoga mat directly underneath just for added comfort. What you're going to do is you're going to put one leg on top of the bench, have the other one underneath, and you're just going to lay down on your side. And I like to make sure my knee is on top. Some people do it from their ankle. I don't prefer that. I prefer the knee to be on top just for added support. And what you're going to do is have your mind on this adductor that's on top, and you're going to think about lifting your other leg to meet it and hold. And then go back down, and as soon as you feel that tension release, come right back up and hold. And then you repeat. So those are Copenhagens, and those are going to help work the inner thigh. And then of course, then you're just going to flip around, do the same thing on the other side. Now, a second option for adductors, especially if you're working out from home, is to use a band. And what you're going to want to do is find something that's really stable that you can tie the band around. You want to get one that's attached, making a full circle. So, like I said, find something sturdy that you can really wrap it around, pull it through so it's nice and secure. And then just like we did with the Copenhagens, you're going to support your knee. So you want to stick your leg through and then wrap the band right above your knee. And position yourself so that as you move away, you can feel a stretch. And then you can either just chill with your other leg, or if you want to keep it up, you can. I like to chill so that I can pull my leg past it. And you'll have to play with your foot position just a little bit. But the idea is you want to bring it as far as you can, and then let it stretch. Bring it as far as you can, let it stretch, and keep that tension. And make sure you've moved away enough so that you get a good stretch in between reps. Just like that. And then you do the same with your other leg. Now we're going to touch abductors. So this is a great exercise for your glutes. It's going to really help build that nice perky shelf back there. So we're going to work on the abduction motion. So this is the opposite of the adductors. We're going to be lifting our legs and pulling them away from the body instead of using the tension to pull our legs towards our body. So use a plate, a nice round plate. You can either keep your legs straight or you can bend your knees, but you do want your body to be straight between your knees all the way to your head. So I kind of find there's a happy medium where I bend my knees just a little bit. Then you put the weight on your knee. I know that sounds weird, but it's actually being supported on both the top and the bottom of my knee. And then you're not going to lift up with your hand. Just use this hand to stabilize the weight. Pull it up and squeeze. And then think about feeling a stretch in that right hip before coming back up to squeeze. And you do this to failure. And then when this weight gets really easy, move on up to another weight. Real quick, I want to throw this one in. So when it comes to calves, a lot of times we don't have calf machines at our gym, especially if it's a smaller gym. And you might be doing standing calf raises, but if you want to do seated calf raises in a way that you can be a little more locked in, use a type of leg press. And it can be whatever leg press you want to use. But you can get variety here because you can do it with bent knees. So I'm going to unrack, I should say. So you can do it with bent knees where you keep your knees still, move your toes. Or if you wanted to do a seated straight leg variation, you can do the same thing. So just know that your leg press can double as a calf raise machine. Now let's talk glute kickbacks. use a strap like this if you do not have an ankle strap. Simply shift the grip to the side and put the ball of your foot through the strap itself. This actually gives you more support anyway, and it allows you to push off with the sole of your foot. So with glute kickbacks, you can see about where the cable is positioned, right underneath my hips, so it's not all the way to the ground. And then I'm gonna think about pushing my foot back and out to the side in an abduction motion. That's gonna again hit the top of my glutes, just like we did with those abductor movements. Now, that concludes the exercise portion of this. I will go take you through some more exercises, but not for the purpose of tweaking the movements based on equipment. Now we're gonna move into some tools you can use for the equipment you do have. And just so you know, if there are some more movements that you wanna learn about, or you wanna know how to target specific groups in a gym where you don't have much equipment, let me know. Follow me on Instagram, The Body Sculpting Coach. Get in touch with me on Facebook, Aubrey Whitley, and send me a message. Let me know what you want to learn about, because I am always open to teaching. I love this stuff. So the next thing we're going to do is move into tools you can use, things like straps and belts. And the first thing I'm going to start with is how to use a yoga mat for comfort. If you've ever gone heavy on barbell hip thrusts, or maybe you have a hip thrust machine, even more exciting, you probably know that at some point the bar starts hurting your hips, even when you use one of these little pads. Or if you're using a hip thrust machine, the belt that you use to strap yourself in can be extremely uncomfortable on your hips, especially for a woman. It's just what it is. So what you can do, if this doesn't work, as you can see, you've all probably seen these pads before. Most people use them for squats. Use these for your hip thrust. If it still hurts after you've used these, ditch it. That's when you whip out the yoga mat, okay? Or you can double up. I've done that before where I use the pad and the yoga mat. So especially for those hip thrust machine or reverse ham glute machines, they can be really uncomfortable. Take your yoga mat, fold it a couple times like this. Let's get this bar out of the way. Lay it across your whole hip area, like all the way from your chest to the middle of your thighs. And then, if you're using a machine, strap in, put the straps at the same place this bar is, or if you're using a barbell, do like this. And this is going to offer you so much more support. I can barely even feel this bar on me. So, use the yoga mats. Your gym should have them. Use them for comfort. Now let's talk about when you don't have a spotter. That's an issue. And we tend to not push ourselves as hard if we don't have a spotter because we're scared. I can't tell you the number of times I've been in a gym and someone's doing a big squat movement, loading up the weight without a spotter, and their safety bars are down by their ankles. So pro tip, have your safety bars in a reasonable location. So if I'm doing a squat, just a regular old back squat, and I come down, the bar on my back should not be going down to where my ankles are. It should be more about right here, right? So that way if I fail when I'm coming up, I drop it behind me and it hits the safety bars. So you can see how high up these safety bars are. They're not down low at my feet. So make sure your safety bars are high enough to where they can actually spot you. I'm gonna show you the difference when I actually go to do my back squat. Come down. That's about, when I hit these bars, that's as low as I can go. That's where you want your squat, your safety bars. So worst case scenario, I fail, I'm protected and I'm not ruining the gym floor. So same thing with your chest. Same thing with your chest and your shoulder presses. I actually haven't even moved the safety bars since I did those squats. That's how high up they should be. So if you don't have a spotter behind you, all you have to do, take the bar, you're going hard here. See, I don't have to go past that. Come back up, you get here, you reach failure, let it go. That way you don't have to drop it on your lap, you don't have to toss it to the side, you just have these safety bars beside you. Now, one trick I have seen for this, if you don't have safety bars, which if you don't and you're using a squat rack, you should probably invest in some. I mean, they might save your life. But I have seen women who don't put clips on the sides. So that way, when they're in the middle of a chest press, they can tilt to the side and all the weights will fall off one side, and then they tilt to the other side and all the weights fall off. I haven't been brave enough to do that. I've heard that's a thing. If you're daring, I guess you can try it, but I would recommend doing the safety bar trick. I think that's probably a much safer scenario for you. We're almost finished, almost gonna let you guys free. I'm gonna let you know how to use straps and a belt in just a moment, but first I wanna mention that if you're going to more of an old school gym, maybe the machines are older, which I have no problem with, I love them. A lot of them aren't equipped with the same strap-ins that the newer ones are, so it might be hard to really lock in. You might have to find some tools for that. For example, you might be doing a pull down and maybe there's not a strap to go over your legs, so you're pulling yourself out of the seat. Another thing might be you're doing leg extensions and there's no strap to go around you, so again, you're pulling yourself out of the seat. Travel with the seat belt. Get an old seat belt. I know that sounds kind of silly, but you can just put that in your gym bag, and as soon as you go to a machine that doesn't have a strap that you can really tie yourself into, go ahead and put that around, strap yourself in. I don't have one because my machines are fine, but I'm letting you know that if you're in that situation, traveling with a seatbelt is the way to go. I know it sounds silly. Okay, so when to use these tools? When you progress, you're gonna get stronger, which means that areas like lats are gonna outgrow your biceps. And so what's gonna happen is you're gonna get towards the end of your sets on your pull movements and your arms are gonna be fatigued, but your back's gonna be ready to go. So what do you do in that situation? Well, we don't wanna neglect our arm strength, so keep targeting your arms. It doesn't mean you should stop working them. In fact, you wanna keep strengthening them. But you also need to pay attention to your back and bringing that up as well. Nobody wants bigger biceps than they do a back, am I right? So that's when you incorporate straps. There's no magic straps. It's all about personal preference. So I started off with hooks. You can find hooks. The only thing I'll say about those is it's hard to really lock in around grips. So if you're doing things like neutral grips, it can be a little more tricky, which is where these will come in handy. You can also get the really basic straps. It's like just basically a thin strap that you loop around your wrist. Those are awesome too. So do some shopping. If you don't like the straps that you purchased, purchase another one. And you don't have to spend a bunch of money. So just because they're way more expensive, I found it doesn't necessarily mean they're way better straps. Also ask your friends if they use straps, ask them how they like them. So once I have these on, the way that I like to use my straps to make sure that I'm continuing to build my arms as well is I use these for my top sets. The heaviest sets I do where I'm solely focused on my back. So I'm gonna use a dumbbell as an example. So when I use my strap, I take my grip out of the movement. So it's not like I'm not using my arm at all, but I'm able to really hone in on my lat to do the work as opposed to squeezing the weight to have to pull it. So I only feel this in my lat right now. So you can imagine how using these on a top set is gonna really strengthen some of those larger muscles on your back. So straps aren't bad. Use them if you need them, but don't do it prematurely. If your grip strength sucks and your arms are weak, bring those up first and then incorporate the straps. Same thing with a belt. You may or may not need a belt. If you feel really stable on all your workouts, you don't have any sort of issue in your lower back, you're not even lifting that heavy, don't worry about it. But if you're starting to progress, you're getting heavier and heavier, you can use a belt. So you want this to go, I think about, so here's my hip bone, and I put this right above my hip bone, right in the middle of my torso, around my waist. My belly button's right here, and you wanna strap this on tight. You don't want it to be so tight that you can't breathe, you might pass out, but you do want it to be pretty tight. And I use the same rule with a belt as I do with straps. So I do my top set with my squats, or maybe I'm doing bent over rows, whatever I'm doing to support my spine, or using it to support my spine for, I use it on my top set, And then on my back off set, I ditch it. So that way I'm still building my core, I'm still working on my stability, it's just I'm not compromising my safety. So I have the bar on my back. This is going to help keep my spine stable and neutral. So if you're starting to go heavier and you're starting to get a little sketched out about your lower back, this is the time to use it. Same with rack pulls. That's a pretty spine loaded exercise because you're bent over here and then you're putting that pressure on your spine to bring the weight out of the hole. So this is where having a belt will help. The rule is don't replace the work with the belt. So if you have a really weak core, don't just rely on the belt. Build your core, keep working on that. And then if you've done everything you can, you're as powerful as you can be, go ahead and throw the belt on. One extra I'm gonna throw in here before I end this video are knee sleeves. Knee sleeves. Now, when I was younger, I did not need these. I didn't feel it in my knees. My knees felt great. And some of us, we lift heavy, especially with leg presses and squats. We're building a lot of muscle, and that doesn't mean that our tendons have necessarily caught up with the muscles. Our tendons are much smaller, so we can do some damage if we're not careful. I use knee sleeves for my top sets on my leg presses because my knees were getting sore. So if your knees aren't sore, your form's on point, you look great, you feel great, don't worry about these. But if you're starting to feel a little sketchy with your knees, if they're starting to feel a little bit in pain, maybe before, during, or after your leg day, that's the time to whip these out, okay? Again, maybe use them for a top set, ditch them for the back off, so you keep really strengthening the tendons along with the muscles. But just be safe whatever you do, and above everything else, listen to your body, because your body is gonna tell you what it needs. I know so many heavy lifters that don't respect their body. They just plow ahead, they're number hungry, and they don't listen. So take time to listen to your body. Ask it if it needs knee sleeves. Ask it if it needs a belt. If it does, go for it, but don't use them as a cheat. Don't be lazy. You guys got this. Love y'all. Stay powerful. I hope this video helped. If it did, please drop some love below, share it with your friends who need it, and I will catch you next time for some more tips and tricks on getting shredded. See ya.